Our next presenter, I'm very pleased that Marie Gallant is with us today and able to give us some of her time. Marie Gallant, if you're not aware, she's the Executive Director of the Community Futures Development Association of British Columbia. So that's the umbrella group that supports, advocates, and does work for the 34 independent community futures corporations in BC. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Marie so she can tell us, you know, what she can share about 5 areas of a balanced life.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary, and welcome everybody. I especially want to welcome all of those community futures out there from Manitoba. I know that although we're using a lot of speakers here from BC, that expertise is out there as well. So I just want to make sure everybody feels welcome and is enjoying this afternoon. So a little bit about myself is I've worked now for about 25 years with small businesses in one way, shape, or form or the other. And about 10 years ago, I was self-employed myself and started a business with a business partner of mine, and she also had a lot of experience, many years with working with small business. And we started to talk about some of the challenges that small businesses were facing. And one of the things that really came very high up on the list is the challenge of keeping their life in balance, and how when it gets out of balance, it eventually negatively impacts the business. And so from that, we ran a company called Stress Vendors, which was really targeted to small business owners and teaching them the advantages and the impacts when they do not have their life totally in balance. And so from our research, we really identified 5 areas of our life that are extremely important and affect everything that we do because they're all interrelated. So it's important that we don't just look at business in itself or just look at our health, but look at those 5 areas. And quickly, those 5 areas are our health, which we've already talked a lot about today, our spirituality, our relationships, the work we do, and of course the last one being our finances. So all of those 5 areas seem to be interconnected, and it's really important that when one of those areas or 2 of those areas are out of balance by a great amount, it impacts everything else. So we decided to work with small businesses around those 5 areas and help them. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today referring to the health side of that because we've already had some great speakers, Art, Victoria, Robert, Natalie, who talked on the health side, especially when you have a disability. So, you know, that area has already been well covered, and I think all the information they said about making sure you're eating right and taking care of your health and doing the best you can in the situation you're in, including exercise. And don't forget that, you know, even if you stop 2 or 3 times a day and get up and stretch or do whatever you can do to get a little bit of exercise in is also important. So that health, and that's something that I think people with disabilities are aware of every single day on an ongoing basis. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But I also want to talk about the other 4 areas of your life and how important they are. You know, and the first I want to talk about spirituality and how important that is in our life and keeping us balanced and in focus. And a lot of people, when I bring this up, will assume I'm thinking about God or religion, and that's not what I'm talking about. It will be that for some people, but not for everybody. But it's our grounding and where we come from and what our values are and how we see us as connected to the rest of the world or the universe or the earth. And how important it is to take time to look at that on a regular basis. And we all do that in a different way. Some people may go to church and sit there and meditate. Some people might meditate in the evening and just, you know, try to get things in place in relationship to where the big pictures are. A big thing for me is I love campfires. I try to get in front of a campfire at least 4 or 5 times a year, summer and winter, and just sit there and watch the flames and let my mind sort of relax and really come into connection with what I am inside and what my beliefs are. And I think that's important when you do a small business, especially because you have so many demands on your time that it's really easy to lose your focus of who you are and what you stand for and where you are. So spending some time on that and on the spiritual side of you on a daily basis, I think, is an extremely important step. The other thing that happens a lot of times in relationships is they get put to the back burner when we're really busy, especially when we're busy in a small business. And those relationships may be family, they may be your children, your spouse, or maybe they're just buddies, friends you grew up with in school. Those relationships are more important to you probably when you're struggling and feeling isolated in a small business than they are even when you're in a traditional job. Because when you're in a small business, there is some feeling of isolation sometimes. So, how do you strengthen those relationships at a time when you do not have a lot of time? And I really like what Robert said about, getting his family in to help. I mean, asking your family to help does two things. First of all, it reconnects you with them. They have a better understanding of what you're going through, but also people want to help, and I think that's important. So it's a great time, even if you're really busy, to try to bring those relationships in. I'm a big fan of the Dragon Den, as I know many of you are, and I went to a Dragon Den information session last night. But I'll never forget a session where this guy came in front of the dragons, and he said, I've given everything to this business. My wife has left me, I don't speak to my family anymore because I'm so dedicated to the business. And all these very successful dragons looked at this man and said, then we don't want to do business with you, because we know that you need to have these relationships in order to be successful in what you do. So I think you have to, listen to these experts and know that, keep time for your relationships every day, even when you're in this business and it's a lot of time. The next thing, of course, is your work. And the average small business owner, especially those first few years, tend to work somewhere between 50 and 80 hours a week. And, it can get out of control and you start being less effective. So it's really important to take the time to laugh, to take the time to enjoy life, to enjoy those family relationships. But also, keep in mind that work needs to be done, but how do you keep it in balance? And it's going to be different for each and every one of you, and I think you're going to have to sort of explore ideas of how do I make it happen when I can't afford to hire that extra person. And this is a great time when you can bring in some of those great relationships that you've already got established and working with those relationships to get them to help you out. It's a time maybe that you can't afford an employee, but maybe you can afford a person to contract out small pieces of what you do, very small pieces. And there are other small entrepreneurs that might help you out. That's one of the reasons we thought connecting the entrepreneurs with disabilities across the provinces and across the West now was so important, is how can you help each other and work each other out and maybe do a group of small contracts. And then finally is the finances. A lot of people who have disabilities and who had to be on some system or another really struggled with not enough money to live on for a long, long time. And part of the reasons for you getting into self-employment is so you can get your finances in balance, so you don't have the creditors calling you on a daily basis. And it's very, very difficult, but if you can find a way to even start putting $2 or $3 a week away at the beginning, just anything to feel like you're moving forward with your financial planning. And it doesn't have to be big steps to start out. Eventually we want them to be big steps, but certainly in the early stages, even little steps help. Even putting that quarter away in the jar on top of your shelf every week to show that you're moving forward just helps you realize that finances are part of the process and what you want to accomplish. So I want to tie that all into goal setting, and something that I do both short-term and long-term. When I do goal setting for myself and what I have worked with other small businesses on, is doing your goal setting around those 5 areas. So specifically have targets around your health, your spirituality, your relationships, your work, and your finances. Because different times of our life, one will be much more draining on us than the other. And by always constantly trying to get them to flow together, we will eventually be more at ease with ourselves and have more energy, which is what this is all about. Less stress, less illness. So really having short-term and long-term goals centered around each of those areas. Well, one of the concerns I always have is when I'm working with a small business owner and you talk to them about their goals and they're all centered around their business. That's a very dangerous path to go down. We really encourage instead, look at the whole you and try to do those goals in all of the areas of your life so that when 10 years from now you look back about what the first 10 years of your business will look like, you haven't given it all up just for the sake of the business. But in fact, your relationships are stronger, your health is feeling good, your finances are more improved, you have a better relationship with your family. You know, small business can be a great time for families to pull together, or it can be a time when you pull apart. And so it's really important to work on that. The first time I did a one-day workshop about these 5 areas of your life, 2 weeks later I ran into a gentleman on the street who came up to me and said, "Thank you so much," because I had stopped spending time each evening with my kids because I felt guilty, like I should be at the job and doing work at the job and spending that time there. And he said, "Now I go home and I lift them up and I put them on my knee and I realize why I'm doing what I'm doing, why the business is there, because it's part of building a future for them as well." So don't forget that. So in summary, just don't forget those 5 areas of your life: your health, your spirituality, the relationships, your business or your work, however you want to define that, your finances. And when you're doing your goal setting, remember those 5 areas and try to always bring those 5 areas into balance and have all 5 areas moving forward. And I think when you look back in the long term, if you do that, you'll find you've really moved ahead in all areas of your life. So thank you very much and good luck to you in your future endeavors.
Thank you very much. And with that, people, we're wrapping up this episode of EDP TV. I want to thank everyone for joining in and watching. Thank you very much. Here you go.